That? Harry? No! Yes.
Hell no.
Even though Harry Osborn has experienced some pretty dark times, things in his life are about to get a whole lot harder. Anyways, welcome back, true believers and all you spectacular Spidey fans, to another really exciting Spider-Man PS4 related video. And for today's topic, we are going to be discussing whether or not Insomniac's iteration of Harry Osborn within Spider-Man PS4's universe should actually become one of his biggest villains known to man, of course being Venom. And as we all know already, by the end of Spider-Man PS4, during the second post-credit scene of the game, it is shown that Harry has actually never been in Europe the entirety of the game, and in fact has been staying within Norman Osborn's secret lab within his penthouse. And while Peter and MJ do know by the end of the game that Harry is sick in one way or another, Norman Osborn is the only one to know Harry's full condition. Now that we know the Devil's Breath serum was indeed supposed to be a cure for Harry and Emily Osborn's disease, Norman has tried his best to continue to find a cure for Harry since Emily has already passed away. And since we know Harry being off in Europe running business for Oscorp was nothing more than a huge cover-up, it truly shows how drastic his condition is within this game's universe. Especially since we see an extremely frail Harry by the end of the game being kept in a cryogenic-like stasis that is being kept alive through some form of green goo as well as a black symbiotic-like substance. And even though no one at Insomniac, Marvel, or Sony have officially come out and confirmed what that black substance is, we can all definitely assume that it is in fact the symbiote that we all know and love. And knowing that one aspect of Spider-Man PS4's sequel is going to revolve around black-suited Spider-Man as well as Harry potentially becoming Venom, that is going to be an extremely interesting story to tell. But as you see from the title itself, the main question is, should Harry actually be the one to become Venom within Spider-Man PS4's universe? And to be frank, my main answer for that question is yes. But to explain why, I do have to go in depth within the prequel novel of Spider-Man PS4 as well as some very interesting story points that do occur within the main game as well as the game's DLC. And to start off with, the most important point is Peter and Harry's relationship within the world of Spider-Man PS4. And once again, if you haven't read it already, there is a wonderful prequel novel to Spider-Man PS4 called Marvel's Spider-Man Hostile Takeover, which does go into a few depths of Peter and Harry's relationship. And to quickly summarize their relationship from the book, Peter and Harry's friendship was extremely close all throughout high school, but once they graduated, they did start to drift off ever so slightly. However, during a brief time where Peter was having some relationship troubles with Mary Jane, as well as before he started to intern for Otto Octavius, the main person he could relate to and go to talk about all of his problems with was in fact Harry. Not only was Harry extremely supportive of Peter and MJ's relationship, but he also thoroughly supported him in almost all of his future endeavors. And since Harry is much wealthier than Peter will ever be, he tried to use his financial status to help Peter out of any debt that he may have found himself in, as well as get him in some higher class circles. This mainly includes Harry wanting Peter to party with him at the Deep End New York nightclub, as well as having Peter try and get a job at Oscorp Industries. However, what Peter didn't know at the time is throughout Harry's multiple endeavors, as well as super charismatic attitude, his sickness was just starting to take effect. And it wasn't known until the very end of the prequel novel that Norman stated that Harry went off to do business for Oscorp overseas in Europe. And knowing all the events that occur within Spider-Man PS4 and knowing when the ending takes place, that would mean that Harry has been kept in that state for almost an entire year. And depending on whenever the sequel decides to take place, it could be more than that by the time it releases. Especially if you didn't read the prequel novel, the research stations alone should have gotten you a good insight as to who this Harry Osborn is and what type of connection he does have to Insomniac's Peter Parker. So knowing that the health of Peter's best friend is in such a horrible condition that he needs to be kept in that state for almost a year with a symbiotic-like substance to keep him alive shows how drastic the stakes are for Harry's life. And just knowing what great instances we got with Norman Osborn in the first game, I have no doubt that we are going to receive a lot of awesome scenes with Harry in the sequel. Plus, it's also known that within the Ultimate Comics, Harry Osborn does indeed turn into a very messed up version of the Hobgoblin, who does end up fighting Norman Osborn as Ultimate Green Goblin. So Harry turning into a monster isn't anything new, especially since we did see him turn into Venom within the Ultimate Spider-Man cartoon. However, I do think that the sequel to Spider-Man PS4 will do a much better job than what that show did. And I, for one, can't wait to see what type of events will occur within the next game. However, there is another factor that a lot of people may have forgotten about within Spider-Man PS4's universe, and that is indeed the existence of Eddie Brock. So if you looked through all the backpacks scattered throughout Marvel's New York, you would have found one that showed a good luck card for Peter when he was in fact leaving the Daily Bugle in order to go into research. And as you see, one of the signatures on this card is indeed saying "Great working with you," written by none other than Eddie Brock. Now, even though we don't know the full extent of Peter and Eddie's relationship within Spider-Man PS4 PS4's universe, the least that we do know is that they were indeed co-workers when Peter was at the Daily Bugle. And even though we don't know for sure whether or not Peter was a childhood friend with Eddie Brock similar to the storyline in the Ultimate Comics or just classic rivals like how they are in the standard storyline, I still am very curious to see Peter and Eddie's history. Now, it is a possibility that Insomniac are using Harry as a red herring to make us think that they are going to turn him into Venom by the time the sequel comes out, when in all possibility they could actually have a scene where the symbiote escapes Harry's healing cell and actually finds its way to Peter, and then after he becomes Black Suited Spider-Man, it could turn Eddie into Venom. But seeing how we have much more of a grasp on Harry's character within Spider-Man PS4's universe, as well as an actual voice actor to go along with him besides a small little Easter egg referencing another character, I do think that Venom is actually going to be Harry Osborn within Spider-Man PS4's sequel. And even though some people actually do want Eddie to be Venom, I do think it is going to be a very interesting narrative twist that Insomniac is going to do in a very intriguing way by the time the sequel actually releases. Especially knowing how incredibly impactful the final boss fight was between Spider-Man and Doc Ock, I do think that Insomniac are going to double down on this between Peter and Harry facing off as Spider-Man and Venom. And if we're going to see Harry become Venom as well as Peter don the black suit within Spider-Man PS4's sequel, I can tell that we are going to be in for a really good time. But with all that said, everyone, that's the video that I have for you today, and please let me know all your thoughts in the comments section down below. Do you think that Harry Osborn should be the one to become Venom within Spider-Man PS4's universe, or do you think it should be Eddie Brock or actually someone else? I would personally love to see more of this universe's version of Eddie Brock and Peter Parker interact with each other, but I do think since we already have a great grasp on Harry's character, I think Insomniac are going to stick with that by the time the sequel comes out. And alongside of that, the Ultimate Spider-Man cartoon didn't really do a good job of showcasing Harry as Venom, but hopefully Insomniac have learned from that show's mistakes and will do a better job than what that show did by the time the sequel releases. Besides, knowing what a great fleshed out character Otto Octavius was within Spider-Man PS4's universe transitioning into Doc Ock, I have no doubt that Insomniac are going to do the same thing with Harry becoming Venom. But until that time comes, everyone, thank you all so much for watching. Stay spectacular, Spidey fans. Peace out.
I think you need to lay down and rest for a couple years.
Venom, he's a really cool character.